going back to this, they wished to be married. Obviously, Hja, and not Hugh, wished to be married. But if you look at the Sandbach translation here, they had fallen in love with each other, so they used the they form here for Hja, and she wished to be married. And so it's the same thing, it's the same mistake in the primal history section where Welcome back to the channel. I'm calling this video Lost in Translation, and you'll be accompanying me through the revision of Chapter 12, called Intrigues and Divisions. But first, the very first translation of Codex Urlinda by Dr. Jan Gerhardus Ottema was published in 1872. Ottema was a member of the board of the Frisian Society, Fries Genootschap, and this is an organization set up to preserve the language, culture, and history of Friesland. Over the course of his career, Dr. Ottema published many articles spanning the spectrum from classical languages to theology, philosophy, history, and even mathematics. He also published several articles about, and a few short books about the Urlinda manuscript. His original translation from 1872 was later used by a wealthy ship owner and plantation owner by the name of William Robertson Sandbach to create the first English language translation, which was called the Urlinda Book, published in 1876 by Trübner and Company, London. Sandbach used Ottema's 1872 translation and translated the manuscript and introduction to the book by Ottema. Probably he was helped by his wife, whose name was Sarah Maria Baroness von Capellan. She had been a lady-in-waiting of Queen Sophie of the Netherlands. And there are no other works authored or translated by Sandbach. Even before Ottema's death, which was purportedly by suicide after he realized that the manuscript had been a fake all along, which seems to be it's a dubious story. It was put about many decades after his death, but it's been echoed by academics ever since. But even before that, there were objections to some of his translation solutions. For instance, Cornelis over de Linden himself, who was the namesake and owner of the manuscript, he voiced concerns over Ottema's uncited changes to the alphabet page in Chapter 6. He added his own version of some of the letters, and over de Linden was also concerned about his translation of a word od, O-D, in the primal history section. And this is a topic that's even now being argued about on YouTube, for example. I'll play a clip.
After the 12th Yule festival, she, Earth, gave birth to 3 maidens, Lyda out of glowing, Finda out of hot, and Freya out of warm dust. When the last came, were all to breathe his breath upon her, in order that men should be bound to him. When she was full grown, she took pleasure and delight in the visions of Woralda. Hatred entered them. They each bore 12 sons and 12 daughters every Yuletime, too. From this came all mankind. Now let's see how Ott translated these lines. He writes, after the 12th Yule feast, she bore 3 girls, Lida from glowing hot, Finda from hot, and Freya from warm substance. As they lay naked, Woralda fed them with his breath, so that mankind would be bound to him. As they matured, they became fruitful and dreamed of pleasure. They received Woralda's Odd into them, and so they each bore 12 sons and 12 daughters, twins each Yuletide. All of mankind came from these. I couldn't find Odd in Afrikaans, Dutch, German, or West Frisian. But in English, we have odd, which would be the opposite of even. And later, Eva was too sacred to say, so they would say even for good. The opposite of even is odd. The opposite of good is bad. Therefore, odd would represent bad or hate coming into the world. Odd trad rabina. Sambach took it from the Latin, which means hatred, and so Raubenheimer kept Sambach's translation as hatred entered them. Now, if only Freya received the breath of Woralda's morals and laws within her heart, then it wouldn't be a leap that the other two were jealous and thus hatred entered them, right? So the hatred entered Lida and Finda because Freya got Woralda's breath, right? Hatred entered them is exactly what happens. And it makes sense that this is a part of the earliest history because they are teaching their Fryan brethren that it is in Lida's and Finda's nature to hate Fryans. It's in their nature to hate Fryans. So this is a warning to Fryans, a very important warning. If you go with Ott's interpretation, he has Woralda put the breath in all races equally and doesn't differentiate them, meaning he puts a universalist spin on the earliest history. Also, if we just look at the grammar, we see that Hja, HJA, is she. That is singular. So it couldn't be talking about all 3 getting Woralda's breath. The first, the second, and then the last. It is the last that gets his special breath. She took pleasure in his delight, not they took pleasure. So once again, he is still talking about Freya, the last.
So in 2021, Jan Ott, who is not related to Jan Ottema, published a new English translation of the manuscript, which was entitled Codex Urlinda. This is the 4th English translation since Sandbach, but it's only it's the first probably since Ottema to be translated from the original source text. There is an unpublished 1983 translation by someone called Frank H. Pierce, but this translation reproduces several of the errors that Ottema and Sandbach had in their translation, and so probably wasn't translated from the original source. There is also a very interesting web-only translation into English and Norse, which can be found using the Wayback Machine. The website doesn't exist directly anymore. The English here is often stilted and hard to understand if you don't understand the original Freyas or the Norse, but it's very interesting the way it puts all three languages, makes it easy to compare all three languages. So I'll put a link to both of these translations, the one by Pierce and the website with the Norse translation, in the notes below. There's also an English version available in the self-published work by Alvin J. Raubenheimer. It's called The Chronicles from Pre-Celtic Europe, but this is not actually a translation, but it's a slightly edited version of Sandbach's translation. And so I can't really count it as a translation in its own right. Currently, I am performing the final revisions of the Jan Ott translation. These can be found at wiki.uralinde.org. That's OERALINDA, wiki.uralinde.org. My work began in late 2021 when I revised the section 4F, that's the section about Minerva in Greece, and that was added to the second version of the Ott translation. Later, I did a full revision of the English, which came out as the deluxe edition, and in 2022, as I became more familiar with the text, we realized that a full review of the translation based on the source, the Freie source, would add some nuance that was missing in the older translation, and we ended up correcting several mistranslations, and that came out as the translation-only Yule edition PDF in late 2022. So right now we're in final revisions as our understanding of the Freia's language continues to grow and deepen. The revision process has taken on a completely new, more refined character. And with the help of the wiki, every step is recorded and can be tracked in real time and followed by anyone with an internet connection. So check out the wiki. You'll see the latest developments. You can see where we change things from the older versions. And but to give you an idea of why and how this process happens, I'm going to walk you through just some changes to Chapter 12, Intrigues and Divisions. I pre-recorded it, so I will kind of narrate what I was thinking as I recorded it. I'll point out some points of language, some typical usages, things that are unique to the Freia's language. Sets it apart both from Frisian and obviously it's a language in its own right, but Frisian and Freias are also two different languages, hopefully it'll be fun to go through and maybe learn a little bit about the source of Codex Uralinde. Let's go. So here we are starting at the start page, the main page of the Uralinde wiki, wiki.uralinde.org. And I can scroll down. Here I can find a translation in English, Dutch, or German. Whoops, clicked on that on accident. But here is, for example, the beginning of a brand new German translation. We'll go to the English. You can also learn something about the authors here of the older translations. That's William Sandbach. Here's about Jan Ott himself. We have information about Jan Ottema as well. And Overwijn was another translator. into Dutch. His translation was biased by his political beliefs more than the others. But here is the index for the English translations, and we'll go to chapter 12, which I want to walk through with you today. Here you see first the Jan Ott translation, dated 2023. It's ongoing and being edited live and can be followed and tracked as you can with any wiki. You can find out where the changes happened. There's some footnotes. And down here you'll find the Sandbach version of the same section with his notes. And at the bottom of the page, you can move on to the next section or move back to the other section. So here there's a bit of a navigation ability, and you can move back to the main English translation page here. But I'll start by reading the beginning of chapter 12 because I start the editing that I'm going to show you down here in the second paragraph. The first part I didn't find. So here we are back as promised. This time I hope things are going to be technically a little bit better. I gave up on the idea of using an external camera. I'm just using a webcam, and we'll see how it goes. At any rate, I can see the chat, and I have planned a few things to talk about today. I'm going to start with a reading as I promised initially. The idea of these Friday live chats is to read directly from the translation, the English translation. And if any of you watched the little preview video, it's an older video called Lost in Translation, you can find on my website. That told you a little bit about what we're talking about, just in case you don't know what the Urlinda book is. I will be happy to answer any questions after the reading about that. Today, I'm going to just get right into the reading rather than prefacing it with a lot of context. And we read last time, if you were here and remember, from the first writing in the second half of what we call the Urlinda book. And that was done by Adelbrost. He's the son of Adela, who is a character who comes up in the first half of the Urlinda book. As a matter of fact, the first half of the Urlinda book was written because Adela advised the Freya people to copy down all of the laws and some of the stories that were written on the walls of the burgs when the people were being threatened with annihilation from various other peoples and natural catastrophes. So Adelbrost, as I said last time, he was killed, so he didn't get a chance to write more than one writing. His sister Apollania did carry on with several writings. Some of the for me the most interesting insights into the way of thinking, the mindset of the Freya, the primal teachings, and then the reading that we're going to read today, which really describes a lot of what was going on at the time. So I'm going to start with her very first writing, which recounts the death of her brother, and it's called the Adelbond Alliance. And I'll just get right started with it. This one is really just to give context. It's not the main reading that I want to read today, but we're going to give it a shot here. So, I am called Apollonia. Twice, 30 days after my mother died, my brother, Adelbrost, was found slain upon the wharf. His skull split and his limbs torn asunder. My father, who was already ill, died of the shock. Then my younger brother, Apol, decided to leave and sailed to the west coast of Skaneland, where he built a burg named Lindasburg and prepared to take revenge. For this, Veralda has granted him many years. He has given him 5 sons who are a curse to the Magi and a blessing to my brother. After the deaths of my mother and brother, the most devoted in the land came together and made an alliance called the Adelbond bond. For our protection, my youngest brother Adelhard and I were hidden in the burg, I with the young maidens, and he with the garrison. At the age of 30, I was elected burgmaid. My brother was elected reeve over the Linden wards when he was 50. He was the 6th from my mother's side, but from my father's side the 3rd. Thus, according to the law, his descendants could not use Oferelinda as their surname, but all agreed that an exception should be made to honor my mother. They also gave us a copy of the book of the Adela followers. This pleased me most because my mother's wisdom brought it into the world. In the burg, I found yet other writings that are not in the book, and an ode to my mother. All this I will copy here. So we see several things here in this writing that let me go back to here. So that maybe set the scene for the next reading that I'm going to present. And so the idea of a burgmaid is the realm which is called Freias Land in the Urerlinda book, stretched from what is current day Friesland, Frisia, to throughout the European continent. Basically, it was Europe, not all of Europe, but the certainly France, parts of Germany, the northern parts. France further down, basically around the coast of so from the Netherlands over through France down to Spain, and then the southern coast up until the time when Marseille, Massilia, or Missalia, as it's called here in the book, was sold off to the Gola, who became the Gauls. Running quickly through history here, So that's Friesland, and Friesland was characterized by a network of burgs, which are so the word burg still exists in almost every language, as you can see in a recent video that I put out, but definitely in German and also in English as the word borough or burg, as in Pittsburgh, and the burgs were. So later burgs that we know from medieval times were fortresses, but the burgs described in Codex Uralinde were a bit larger, a bit more. How should I say it? It had more of the meaning that we use in English with borough or burg, meaning town. So a burg was a town, and it was built around a central tower. The word burg in Arabic, for example, burj, is still means tower to this day, and so the central tower radiated out into a ringed burg village, and then that was surrounded by townlands and agricultural and people living outside the burg walls, and that would have been a region or a ward as we called it here, and so a burgmaid was the chief. It wasn't a priestess, so you'll hear it called a priestess later in Rome and Greece. The watchers of the eternal flame would have been priestesses, but the burgmaid was more of a worldly leader. She served as the conscience of the people. She upkept the traditions, the old stories, and she, together with the maidens, who would later be called like the Vestal Virgins, they watched over an eternal flame and kind of kept the spark alive, and the connection to Varalda, God, and kept the old traditions, and then the maidens went out and spread them amongst the people, so that the traditions remained foremost in the hearts and minds of the people. The burgmaid was the matron of the burg, of the tower. And there was also a matron for the entirety of Freies Land. That would have been the Volksmother, or just the mother, and or also the honorary mother, Ehrmutter. And so it was kind of a hierarchical system. You had the Volksmother at the burg in Tesland, which was the largest and most important of the burgs, and then throughout Freies Land, every settlement had a burg, and that was led by a burgmaid. And Apollonia eventually became a burgmaid. I don't know if she says that here. I can't remember if she said that so her brother eventually became the reeve over the Linden wards, and that's where the name Uralinde comes from, by the way. And I'm on the wrong page here. I was elected burgmaid, yes. So at the age of 30, she was elected burgmaid. And the reading that we're going to concentrate on today is one that Apollonia wrote about her tour through Freies Land, through parts of Freies Land. As I said, it was quite a bit larger than what's going to be described here, but It was a traditional tour that a burgmaid was meant to do before she started her duties. So it's called Along the Rhine. And let me see if I can... So I'm going to begin reading. Before a burgmaid takes up her post, she must travel through the land for a full year, accompanied by 3 elder burglords, and 3 old maidens. This I too have done. My journey was along the Rhine. Oops. The eastern bank upstream and along the other side downstream. The further upstream I came, the poorer the people appeared to me. Jetties had been built out from the banks to catch sand, which was filtered on sheepskins to win gold. But the girls wore no crowns made of that gold. There were more people there in the past, but since we lost Skaneland with its iron, they go to the mountains to delve ore, from which they produce iron. Above the Rhine, between the mountains, I saw Marsata, lake dwellers, which are people who live upon the lake. Their houses are built on pilings for protection against wild beasts and evil people. There are wolves, bears, and terrible black lions, and they are the Svetsar. Whoops, wrong one. There we go. Or neighbors of the Hither Greeklanders and the Celta followers and the savage Twisklanders, all eager to rob and plunder. The Marsata make their livelihood by fishing and hunting. The skins are prepared by the women and tanned with birch bark. The small skins are soft like maiden's felt. The burgmaid at Freyasburg had told us that they were good and simple people. Though, had I never heard her speak, I would not have thought that they were Freyas at all, but savages, so uncultured did they seem to me. Their pelts and herbs are traded by the Rhine dwellers and exported by the navigators. All along the far side of the Rhine, it was the same, down to Leidasburg. This burg had a great lake, where people also lived on houses set on pilings. Those were not Freya's folk, but black and brown men who had served as rowers to help the sea voyagers come home. They were obliged to stay there until the next departure of the fleet. Finally, we arrived at the Alderga mouth. At the southern head of the harbor stands the Varaburg, a stone building where a variety of shells, horns, weapons, and clothes are kept, brought home from distant lands by the navigators. A quarter's distance from there is the Alderga, a great lake surrounded by barns, houses, and gardens, all richly ornamented. In the lake, a great fleet lay ready with flags of many colors. On Fridays, the shields were hung about the decks. Some shone like the sun, the shields of the Witt-King, or Sea King, and his watch by night were gilt-edged. Behind the lake, a canal had been dug, which flowed past the burg Forana. and further through a narrow mouth into the sea. This was the way out for the fleet, and the flea was the way in. On both sides of the canal are beautiful houses painted in bright colors. The gardens are surrounded by evergreen hedges. I saw women there wearing tunics of animal skin, fine as paper. As in Stavern, the girls were adorned with golden crowns upon their heads, with rings around their arms and ankles. South of Forana lies Alkmarum. This is a mere or lake wherein lies an island. On which the black and brown men abide, like they do at Leidasburg. The burgmaid of Forana had told me that the burglords visit the island dwellers daily to teach them what true freedom is and how people ought to live amicably with one another in order to gain the blessings of Varalda's spirit. If any of them were interested and able to understand, he would remain as a guest until he was fully educated. That was done to elevate the foreign folks and to win allies everywhere. I said I had once been in the Saxon marks, but I saw less. Oops. Sorry. I said I had once been in the Saxon marks at the Burg Managarda Forda, though there I had seen more poverty than the wealth I found here. She explained, when an eligible man in the Saxon marks comes to court a girl, she asks him, "Can you protect your house against the banished Twisklanders? Have you not killed one yet? How many aurochs have you caught, and how many bear?" Oops. "And wolfskins have you brought to the market?" From this it comes that the Saxmen, who leave the farming to their wives, not even that among the Saxmen who leave the farming to their wives, not even 1 in 100 can read or write. The result is that no one has a motto written on his shield, but merely the distorted image of some beast he has slain. And the end result is that they have become very brave, but nearly as dumb as the animals they capture, and as poor as the Twisklanders against whom they make war. Earth and sea were made for Freya's folk. All of our rivers run to the sea. Leida's and Finda's folk will wipe each other out, and it will be up to us to populate the empty lands. In exploring the seas lies our prosperity. Thus, if you wish for the Highlanders to take part in our wealth and wisdom, this advice I shall give. Make it custom for the girls to ask their suitors before they say yes, "What have you seen of the wide world? What can you tell your children about foreign lands and distant peoples?" If they do so, the boldest young men will come to us. They shall become wiser and richer, and we shall no longer have need of those wretched outsiders. The youngest of the maidens who were with me on the journey hailed from the Saxon marks. When we returned to our burg, she asked to have leave to go back to her home. There she later became burgmaid, and that is why so many Saxmen now voyage with the navigators. So this was not meant to be an audio book. I tripped over my tongue a little bit, and it's hard because I've only got one screen, but I hope you enjoyed listening and learned a little bit. There's some interesting bits and pieces here that I wanted to go through. One is, let's see, I'll start by just opening this back up here. One is, so we talked about the burgmaid, and the burglords. Basically, those are people who served for a certain term in the military and as defenders, and became full citizens. So a burglord means a full citizen, a burgheer. Heer is a very interesting word. It still exists in German. I think in Dutch, and I think even English speakers are familiar with the word. I can't be 100% sure of the etymology of heer, but I'd be willing to challenge the whatever the official etymology is, with the notion that that heer may have something to do with belonging. So heeren, would mean to belong to it. So gehören in German, or bijhoren in Dutch, something like that. And because we use the word lord here, and when you think lord, you think of the boss, right? So a burglord would be in the kind of folk vernacular, you would think basically, oh yeah, these are the like the House of Lords in English in England. These are the higher ups, but even in English parliamentary speak, they talk about peerage. So a lord is a peer. So peerage also has this idea of belonging to. So it's just a full member of the society, and that's all that burglord actually means here. Someone with voting rights on issues at assembly. And get it out of your mind that lord has something to do with authority, or authoritarian type of authority. Yes, authority, but in the sense of being a full member of society. So 3 elder burglords. So they're elder burglords, and not just any old. I think you can become a burglord around age 20 something, after spending the designated amount of time in as a defender. Then you become a burglord, and eventually you get voting rights and things like that. So and then 3 old maidens, that would be we got the idea of old maid in English, and old maid has its own meaning nowadays. But an old maiden would be somebody who was a maiden at the burg and remained a virgin, left the burg and went out to teach amongst the people. But she would have remained unmarried in order to still be considered a maiden. So I guess we have the word old maid from this notion of a virgin who never gets married. So Apollania was a maiden and became burgmaid then as well after this trip. The sand thing, the catching sand in along the Rhine. This was something that I was a little bit that I didn't really know. Hang on a second. That so prospecting for gold and panning for gold is still a thing in the Rhine River. There used to be a complete industry, and there are some gold coins, very, very valuable gold coins that were made. They minted special coins with Rhine gold. And so those still exist. They haven't made any of those for quite a while now, but you can still go and pan for gold now, obviously with more modern technologies and a little bit, more efficiently than back in the day. And you're not going to get rich, as she said. These are even back then they spent all their time panning for gold there, and they were not rich people, but that's how they subsisted. And I just thought that was very interesting. I had no idea that you could still pan for gold in the Rhine. And anybody interested, you can. I think there are vacation packages where you can do the same thing. So that is. I'm looking at the chat. Hang on a second. Wow, I like that passage. How bravery is good without knowledge doesn't lead to much. There we go. Bravery is good, but without knowledge, it doesn't lead to much. Okay. Oh, I see the thing about the Saxons. Yeah. That's the interesting thing about the Urlinde book. These little fragments, you can take them at like a face value, and then if you read them and think about them a little bit, there's so often there's some kind of a message or lesson in there. Whether it's meant to be that lesson or not, I can't even say, but certainly. It's the message that Northwind here took out of it is in there as well. So that was the gold thing, and then the marsata. So these people who live on the lake. This was something that interestingly enough, let me get rid of these other pictures here. So this is, we'll talk about the Schweizer also and the Schweiz, so Switzerland. So one thing that we find in the Urlinde book is that the word Schweizer means neighbor. And if you think of Switzerland, it says that they were the neighbors of the Hither Greeklands, which is now called Italy, the Twisklanders, so which is now what's called Germany, the Britain, so the Brits, as well as I don't know if they mentioned the Gauls, but so basically, just as Switzerland is indeed the neighbor of all of these things, the word Switzerland is said to come from the name of one of the cantons, Schweiz, and that was very important in the Confederation, the Helvetian Confederation. But this suggests that it goes further back, right? It's that the word Schweizer means neighbor. And it really makes a lot of sense that this country that's called Switzerland is the neighboring country. Switzerland has, I don't know exactly how many official languages, but let me think. It's Italian, French, German, Swiss German. Is there another one? So there's at least 4 official languages of Switzerland, because it is like it's literally a mix of all these different peoples. And so that the idea that the word Schweizer, the Freies word Schweizer, meaning neighbor, gave Switzerland its name, it doesn't seem that far-fetched to me. Of course, the argument is that this book was written not too long ago, and so in the 1850s or something like that. It came out to the world in the 1860s. It was translated in the 1870s. So it would have had to been written somewhere early 1860s, late 1850s. And these Pole villages that were mentioned in the book, the people, the Marsata, living on the lake. Mar meaning lake, and Sata meaning living on, sitting on the lake, or settled on the lake. The existence of these villages wasn't even known about until the 1850s, like almost 1860s, somewhere like 1856 or something. Somebody, there was a drought and the water levels went down, and then they found all these pilings, and then over the course of the last 150 or so years, they've discovered more and more of these piling villages all around that area. So in France, Italy, Switzerland, Germany, and right up there at the top of the Rhine. So these genius authors of the hoax Uralinde book would have also had to know about these piling villages quite quickly and have surmised their broader existence. They talk about that down in the delta of the Rhine there was also pole dwellings, and if we go to natural history by Pliny the Older, the elder. There's a Pliny the Younger and the Pliny the Elder. In his natural history, he describes a people down in the delta of the Rhine called the Marsaci in Latin. The Marsaci and Marsata. You can, I don't even need to point out these similarities there. And obviously, we're not going to find any pole villages down in the delta of the Rhine, right? I mean, it's the inundations from the sea and just the Rhine itself and the Meuse and the Scheldt and all these rivers that flow in there. It's all been washed away. Or at least covered in silt. So you wouldn't expect to find archaeological evidence of this, but if you find archaeological evidence at the top of the stream, so all the way upstream, and the description here, and then you find the archaeological evidence up there, and then you find the linguistic evidence of a folk down in the delta called the Marsaci, which they would have called the Marsata in Freias, you start to piece together the idea that, wait a second, maybe there is more to world history than we're being taught. And Marsaci is not the only one of these kind of oddly Freias sounding names of people that are described in Roman historiography, like the Batavian. You can, so Bat in Freias, and I think even in Dutch, I sometimes get mixed up. But Bat, Bat is like a benefit, something that is something that benefits you. You might even say like wealth or something. And so, and the Batavian, you could think the Bathavende, the those who have a good life, kind of, or the rich folk, or the that one might be a little bit grasping at straws there. But then there's what are some of these other ones here? Like the Sturi was a the Frisi, of course, were described in by Tacitus, and then you've got the Sturi, and then you've got the navigators. We talked about the navigators at the end of this section here, and that in Freias is the Sturier. So the steerers, the steerers of the boats, right? It's the sturier, and in Latin, in the sturi. Marsaci, we talked about Batavi, but there's more. If I could just think of some of them are fun. The Chauki, no, maybe not. Yeah, if you go through the list, there's a bunch you could come up with, and people with more knowledge could maybe even do a better job than I can. I also wanted to talk about. Wait a second. There it is. This map here. So this is a map that is kind of a reconstruction of the Netherlands around 1000 AD. And I'll talk about it in just a second. I'll just have a look here at the chat as well. There's a couple more that have come. Languages of Switzerland, German, French, Italian, and Romansh. Okay, thank you, Emerson. And Colin says, I didn't know about the etymology of Switzerland. Yeah, I mean, it's just my surmise. I wonder also if the Greek name Apollo. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you talk about Apol and Apollonia. Definitely, if this is a real manuscript, then the Greek names like Apollo and Minerva, well, that's Roman, but Athena and because Ata is also a Freies word, right? So Athens was, according to the Urlinda book, is named after was named by Minerva to make clear to later generations that the land wasn't conquered, that the city was not built by conquerors but by allies. So I mean, lots and lots of what we know as Greek and Roman mythology had to have come from this culture if this is a real manuscript from the distant past. But you see some names here that, so this map was created in the 1700s, and you still see at the top there in the green section, where that's Westfriesland, you see Medemolek, and there's a story, and there's still a place called Medemblik. There is a story in the Urlinda where they save a burgmaid named Medea from her burg, and they name the river from which they kind of sortied. It was like an ambush. The where they were hiding in ambush ended up being called Media Melakia, and then later here we see right in that same area Medemolek. So I mean, that's one of these things like the Sturi or the Marsaci, and the Alkmarum. So these bodies of water don't exist as they are pictured here anymore. Right in the middle there, where there's land, there is I can't even remember what it's called nowadays. The Zuiderzee and the North Sea. It's what's it called nowadays? Help me out in the chat. Since they built the Afsluitdijk, there is no Zuiderzees, but rather the I can't even remember what it's called. But so there's water there now, right? And where there is a lake at the Alkmarum, which is described in the section we read, that's land now. And there's a town called Alkmaar, and I don't know if it's exactly in that same place. The land and water shift a lot up there. They still do. But one of these places here could have been the Alderga. If you think about, if you look at this larger body of water here with the island of Urk, which is now no longer an island, for example, that maybe that island was the island that is talked about in this section where the black and brown men were sent to live, if they to keep them apart from the Friars' society until they had learned the Friars' morality. And you can see the river kind of going through the middle of that green section there. That would be the Flea, right? So that's the way in to the Alderga. And Alderga could mean something like everyone goes through it. So Alderga, ga is definitely to go, and then you see down to where it says Amstelland, where it gets pink down there at the bottom. That would be the way out of the Alderga, going all the way over to the coast, under Alkmaar and above Haarlem, and that would be modern day. That I'm guessing that I've got it right. That would be modern day. Egmont an See, right? You can see it here in a more modern, way less detailed, but more modern map. You can see that there's no land in the middle there, but water, and that the part where the Alkmarum was is now no longer water, but land. And there where it says Egmont an See, there, that's just like a beach town nowadays, but that would have been the narrow mouth through which the ships would set sail out into the broader world. We read about. I'll read that section one more time, just that little bit there. Hang on a second. Let me find the right page. Finally, we arrived at the Alderga mouth. So that's the southern end of the harbor, stands the Waraburg, and we still have the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, which is very similar to this idea of a Waraburg. And Amsterdam would have been along that kind of waterway leading from this big lake to Egmont. And where we go? Behind the lake is a canal had been dug, which flowed past the Burg Forana. That would have been it's now called St. Pancras or something, but for a long time it was called Fronen, and Forana would mean kind of standing in front, Foran, in the front, and through a narrow mouth into the sea. And the word. The Friars' word for a narrow mouth is engamuda. Let me see exactly how it's pronounced here. Hang on, I've got to search through the Forana. That's a little bit further down. No, that's not it either. There. Een enge muda. So a narrow mouth. And so Egmont is Friars for narrow mouth. So we have all kinds of names ranging from places in the modern day Netherlands and Friesland down into Switzerland, and then all the way down to Greek. We have Texel and Tesland in here in Friesland, and down in Greece you have Thessaloniki, which you can see these similarities. And then this book kind of appears as a Rosetta Stone to explain or at least offer some sort of explanation about why maybe some of these places would have been have similar names, and or why Athena is called Minerva in Rome, right? And then it's quite easy in the Urlinda, of course, the Atania, and was named by Minerva, right? And the hither and far Greeklands. So what we call Italy and Greece were not considered a separate place, a separate race of people, a separate cultural space, but rather just a closer version and a more farther away version of the Heinde Krekelande and the Fere Krekelande. And then there's the whole question of what Krekelande means, right? Does it mean the land of the creeks? Greece and Italy don't have a lot of big rivers. It's one of the things that characterizes them, is they don't have big, broad, long, wide rivers like some other places for example, in Northern Europe, where we have just longer, and then later much wider rivers. But the waterways are much smaller, like what we would call a creek. And then so the fact that Greece is called Greece in modern language, and it was called Krekelande, and it still is in Dutch, and that the word for a creek is kreek. It's just one thing after another that you just have to start calling into question whether there is, or at least parts of this manuscript, that have some authenticity to them. We can Cadiz, Kadaik. There's so many places we could follow the maps. We could do a session just looking at maps and saying, oh, this is a Freya's word for that, so either these fake authors were super geniuses who just had an encyclopedic knowledge of religion, geography, cosmology, everything from, there's a lack of detail about certain things. Like one thing I noticed, like they never mention the word horse. They don't, they talk about stars, but they don't go, then they say they watch the stars from the top of the burg, but they never go into any detail about any of it. But, I don't know. I guess there's ways to explain why that might be. Those for me would be maybe arguments against the authenticity, that, there's just certain things that you would think would be mentioned on a regular basis in a book, in a manuscript like this. But then the real world occurrence of places, and then the kind of, you look at the etymology of a lot of these places or words, and almost invariably, in some of the interesting words, you'll find that the etymology says it's of uncertain and etymology. You find that in so many of the words that have an obvious etymology if you start to understand the Freya's language. And I don't think it's a conspiracy or something like that, but I do think it's interesting that if, a lot of linguists probably have no idea that this book even exists, that this manuscript even exists. And then if they did come across it, of course, the first thing they would do would be come across the Wikipedia page that tells them that it's all a fake and that they should just ignore it. And so the chances that we're going to kind of get to the bottom of this by relying on just time to heal all wounds seems nil to me. We've got to put some effort into the whole project, which is what I'll close with. I mean, I put a lot of effort into this. I don't have any money. I don't have very much time. And I've dedicated so much of my energy to this, and I see that a lot of people are interested in it. I did that little promotional video about doing the live streams, and I got 400 subscribers in 2 days. And I lose subscribers every time I do a video. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon, but what I have noticed is that people are not liking the videos. People are not commenting on the videos. There's a handful of people, some of them I see in the chat, who will comment on a regular basis. But I am starting to lose heart about this whole thing. I know it's something that it's not going to solve itself, but I also can't bear the weight of the world on my shoulders. So we've put the wiki site up. I do these videos. There's the foundation. There's the books. There's all kinds of ways to get involved, and I admit I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the whole infighting thing that everybody this guy, it was in that preview video that I ran. Just this ridiculous. He's distorting things, or everybody who comes out with some kind of work about it, it's never constructive. It's always reminds me a lot of critical theory types who all they do is come in and destroy what's existing without really without adding anything constructive to the process, and sowing discord. And this is what's talked about in Codex Urlinda, in Urlinda book. That's how the culture was subverted in the first place, through discord, deceit, intrigue, and then these people purport to be interested in the project, and rather than actually getting involved, they deconstruct. And that's what critical theory is about. I live in Frankfurt. I went to the university in Frankfurt. I lived and breathed critical theory. This is home base here. That's all you ever talked about. So I know critical theory when I see it. I know deconstruction when I see it. And it's a disappointing part of this journey. I'm going to keep going with the live streams as much as I can. They take up, like I said, a lot of my energy, but I'm glad that a few of you are enjoying yourselves with it, and I would like to see even those of you who enjoy this work actually getting involved in the work. The resources are there, and we're making more all the time, and hopefully some of you can add your own efforts to the process, and see if we can push this thing forward to find some of these things out that we're talking about, because nobody is going to come and say, oh yes, Pliny the Elder was talking about these people. That nobody's going to connect the dots for us. Yeah. So thank you for listening to my rambling, and I hope you enjoyed the reading. I will be back, maybe not next Friday, but on some Friday sometime soon. And until then, I wish you all the best.